Welcome back. Today I'm going to show you how to make a basic walk cycle like you see here on the screen. We have a character that's just sort of walking along, and we're going to do this in just a few keyframes. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and exit the program and start from scratch so you can kind of see how it works. So I'm going to open up Maya. And as it starts to come up, okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and set my scene, or set my project rather. So I'm going to set my project. I have it under Dataman Walking. That character that we're going to use is a character that I downloaded from turbosquid.com, and I'm going to go ahead and open up a rigged version of it. Okay, so we set a project, we now have it open, and this is our character. In the school that I teach at, we call this Dataman, so I'm going to be referring to it as Dataman quite a bit. And it's just a designer dummy that's used for drawing and other types of applications in art. Again, I downloaded it from TurboSquid. It comes rigged from TurboSquid. I actually stripped that rigging off and re-rigged it using the rigging tools here in Maya under this particular character here. I'm not going to get into that in this tutorial. All I'm going to do is show you a basic walk cycle. And in future videos I will continue on with the walk cycle, doing the infinite walk cycle and even a turn using the tools inside of Maya. So let's first though get started with our walk cycle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I have everything set up. Right now I have my animation tabs on, so you can see across the top I have the stuff I want for my animation. Under playback, I want to make sure my playback speed is set to real time. Over here in my workspace, if you have this option in Maya, you can go ahead and do that. It's workspace, and I have it under animation. What that does is it gives me these preset windows here. You can see my outliner is set over here, my viewport here in the middle, and then over here I have my tabs. In this case, I'm going to be using my channel box quite a bit. And then down along the bottom, you'll see that I have my graph editor. There's also a time editor in here, and then my timeline down along the bottom. What I want to do next is I want to change it from 30 frames per second to 24 frames per second. And when I do that, it changes this to frame 1, which is what I want. And then I'm going to also change this to 1. And over here, because I'm going to be working with 24 frames, from 1 to 25 would actually be 24 frames. And I'm just going to narrow it down to 25 right in here. And that sets everything up here for me as well. And I'm going to go ahead and push that back over to 1. So now I'm on frame number 1. And I have all of that set up the way I want it. The next thing I need to do is this particular character, because I re-rigged it, is not grouped anymore. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select everything. I'm going to come up here under Edit, and I'm going to group it. You can also use Control-G as your shortcut. Double click on it, and I'm going to call it Dataman. And now you can see everything is listed underneath that group. Okay, so that's everything for the preset. If you're showing up with a wireframe instead of the solid, you can always hit 6 on your keyboard, and that would change him into a solid character instead of the wireframe, which you might have here. 5 or 6 will work. Right now I'll use 5 actually, because this doesn't have any materials added to it. It kind of makes it a little bit lighter, easier to see. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is I want to talk a little bit about walk cycle and what a walk cycle is when we talk about animation. This is another download from the internet. If you put in walk cycle, this will probably come up quite a bit. This is a male walking reference picture. And here you can see 5 frames of a person walking. And in this first one, this is the contact. Second one is down. So contact means that we have both feet on the ground, the ball of the foot and the heel of the foot. In this case, his left foot is forward, right foot is back, and of course the opposite arms. Now we move forward to the down position. This is the lowest point that a person has when they're walking. So as you know, when a person walks, their head also goes up and down, so it kind of gives you this head bob or a rise up and down. So the first one, the contact one, is done in frames 1 and frame 25. They're identical. So this one and frame 25 would be identical. And the reason why you want it to be exactly the same is so that when your animation is flowing through on just the walk cycle, you don't have any kind of weird popping thing happening. And then we'll move forward to the next one frame, which is down again. This is the lowest point. We have the foot completely flat. The trailing foot has raised up a little bit onto the toes to get ready to swing forward. This is done in frames 4 and 16. Now, they would not be identical in frames 4 and 16. This is what you would see in frame 4, and then you would see the mirror image. So the trailing foot here would actually be the foot that would be flat in frame 16. Frame 19 is where we have passing. That's where the leg starts to come forward here. And as you can see, it starts to pass by the planted foot, which is this foot here that's on the ground. So this foot is now passing to come forward here. This happens in 7 and 19. Peak point, or you might also often see this referred to as up. Since we have down, we would have up. This is where the head would normally be higher than at the highest point of the walk. Here, it doesn't look to be that way. It could have been at the timing that the picture was taken. But anyway, as you can see, the arm positions are beginning to swap, and so are the foot positions. This foot is now beginning to come forward. Your foot is still at an angle with the toes, the ball of the foot on the ground, toes bent, and you're reaching forward. It looks like here that the foot is almost touching, but actually it would be a little bit further forward probably with the heel, so you're reaching out for the ground. And then here you actually have contact again. Now 13 is different than 1 and 25 because although it's a contact, it's the mirror of this one. So the leading foot here is actually the trailing foot over here. So that is the walk cycle broken down in 13, or rather 12 frames, going from 1 to 13. And this is one step. So when we're talking about a walk cycle is 2 steps because we're doing 24 frames per second. And since this is 12 frames, this is 1 step. And the second step is done in the other 12 frames. So that's 2 steps per second. And that works out pretty well with using 24 frames per second in our animation. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to import that picture and use it as a reference for our character here. So the way we do that is we go to View in your viewport, and then we go to Image Plane and then Import Image. And that should take you to your source images if you set your project. And here is my reference picture. And I'm going to hit Open. And there is my reference picture, but unfortunately I did it wrong. We don't want to do it here in the perspective view. This is something I always tell people not to do, and because I wasn't paying attention, I did it myself. So I'm going to hit Control Z. I'm going to undo that. And what we want to do instead is bring it into our side, because we're going to use it as a side reference. If you bring it into perspective like I just did, you can see that it kind of takes up the entire viewport. And it just kind of has this weird effect. Don't really want that. So let's try that again. Here is the side. I'm going to go up here to View, and I'm going to go to Image Plane, and I'm going to import image, and again, that picture, and hit Open. And now you can see it right down here at the base of my feet. And if I zoom out a little ways, you can see that it's very small. I'm going to turn off the grid for a moment. And I'm going to hit R on the keyboard, and I'm going to scale this up. I'm also going to move it up a little bit so I can see my reference. And scale it up so it's roughly the same size as my data man. I'm going to hit 6 or 5 rather on my keyboard. And now you can see my character here up against this character in the background, against the reference picture. And just get it close. It doesn't have to be perfect. All right, and now I'm going to go ahead and slide it over and put Dataman roughly right about there. Okay, so this is the front of Dataman. You can kind of see this point on his face right here. If I went back to the image here, you can also see that we need to move this picture because he's being cut in half by the picture, and the other side will just show up as a skeleton. If I zoom in here, you can kind of see it's just the leg that you can see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this away from my Dataman so he's not touching. Okay. And the other thing was, I'm going to show you the front of Dataman. Right here, you can see the point that I'm talking about, and that's a little bit different. So he's facing in the opposite direction of the direction that we want him to go. So now I'm going to go ahead and select all of these over here. So they're both references and the basic model. It doesn't work if you just select the Dataman up there. And then here in rotate Y, I'm going to just type in 180, and that should flip him around so he's now pointing in the right direction. And that should be good for now. So also, if you notice, I want to point out everything here is set to 0. We are going to leave that alone. If we moved Dataman, you can see that it would change our translate Z. I want to leave him right where we are because I want the body to bob up and down, but I don't want it to move back and forth. We're not going to do that with this walk cycle. So we'll just leave everything set to 0 except for the rotate Y we just did for turning him around. All right, so now what I'm going to do is start getting Dataman in position. One more thing that will help us is I'm going to use a reference. So I just clicked on the cube up here, and I'm going to rescale the cube because it's very small right now. A little bit bigger. Squish it down so it's just kind of gives me a frame of reference from the side. And I'm going to put it right down at the bottom of his feet. Okay, and that's probably good right there. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the character rig to begin with. If we go back to our perspective view and we take a look at the character himself, you see that there's a lot of additional things. So we have this here, which are his bones. Think of them as his bones. That's the control references and that are also around him. So these are the control references, these circles, the squares, and those are things that we can use to control the position of Dataman. The center one right here is kind of where his hip controls are, and if I grabbed it and pushed it down, you can see that I can move him up and down. And then his feet get to a point where they're planted and he rotates. It is not the cube that I brought in that is causing his feet to be planted and move. All I did was put him at 0, 0, roughly at a position underneath his feet so that it would appear that he's standing on it and it's giving him surface to walk on. And just using it as a reference. Okay, so I'm going to hit Control Z, straighten him back up. The ankles are controlled, and the legs rather, are controlled by these ankle control points. So if I move them forward, his whole leg moves. And this is what you're going to use to move his legs. You're not going to use the joints in his hip or his knee. You're going to pull these back and forth with the move arrow. Another thing you can do is from that ankle point, if you hit E, you can also rotate them. Okay? All right. But for his arms, we're going to use a different method. For his arms, we're going to actually rotate them. So if I hit the joint in the middle, and then I can rotate his arms just like you would normally rotate. And you're going to rotate each individual joint for his arms. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead, since we're going to need to have him down anyway, I'm going to put his arms down out of the T pose. Okay, and I want to make him fairly close to his body, just like a person when they walk. Okay. And another thing to note, besides being able to lift him up and down with this, you can also rotate him at the hips. And we're going to do that here shortly. Okay. But first, let's get some other parts of his body lined up. So that's pretty much how the control works for Dataman. We can also, I forgot to mention, his toes and his hands work the same way, but we're not going to move his hands at this point. So for his toes, we can click on this end joint here, not the ones at the tip, but here, and this will allow us to rotate his toes up and down. Okay. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and get started with putting him in our first walk cycle. All right, so I'm going to first start with his legs. Okay. Make sure I got the right one. Yep, that's the right leg. Okay. All right, so in the picture, our character has, or the reference picture character has his right leg back, so I'm going to do that here. And I'm also going to rotate the toe down initially. And then I'm going to pull his left leg forward, kind of stretching out, reaching. And I'm going to rotate his foot upwards so that when he has contact, the heel is actually contacting. And because our character has a little bit longer legs, I think, than the guy in the background, we're going to have to pull him back a little bit further maybe. And don't forget, we're also going to curl the toes. So I'm going to select that, and I'm going to rotate the toes somewhere right around, probably -30 on my Z rotate for this. Okay. And looks like we've got that pretty good. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to push him down to the ground if I can. And it's not going to let me. So what I'm going to have to do is kind of work him down a little bit. And I don't want to go too far down because I want to be able to have more of a down for the down position there. But I want to get just enough reach. So we're just going to kind of play with it to get this first position right. So we build on everything from here. You know what, maybe just a little bit of bump in the knee. I don't want it to look too stiff and mechanical, but then again, he kind of is a robot, so maybe I can get away with it. All right, so now we've got that initially done. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give him a little bit of a lean, because as you're walking, you kind of lean forward a little bit. Maybe something like that. Might be just a little too much. Maybe 2 degrees. All right. That'll work. Now we're going to go ahead and rotate his arms. So I can get to his arms by selecting the bones in his arms here, or I can also select them from another screen. I want to make sure I've got the arm that I want to have. In this case, it's the right arm, and I want to put the right arm forward since the left leg is forward. So that'll work. Excuse me. All right. It might be a little too much. And then I'm going to grab the other arm. See if I can do it from here. Nope. Go ahead and try it. Here. Rotate it back. I'm going to adjust my reference picture just a little bit, just to give me the ability to kind of have something a little bit better lined up. Make sure I got the body alignment right. And now I'm going to go ahead and adjust the elbows. This arm back a little bit and bring the elbow down. Maybe just a little bit like that. Okay, so this is our first pose, and what we want to do from here is go ahead and get our first keyframe done. Okay. Okay, and in order to do our first keyframe, we want to double check to make sure that we're in frame 1 down here, which we are. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a marquee select. So I'm just going to click up above my character and I'm going to do a full selection. So click and drag and select it so that all the control points highlight. And I'm going to hit S on my keyboard, and that'll set it so that all of our control points are at their particular position right now, and they have a keyframe on them, so that any changes I make now will start my auto key, which is down here. So make sure your auto key is on. Make sure we're in frame 1. And now we're going to jump to frame 25, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to hit S on my keyboard, and now you can see that I have this line across the bottom down here. If I drag this over, hold the Alt button, middle mouse button, I can drag it in, zoom it out a little bit. It kind of moves along as I move along down here. So you'll see it kind of jump around and it'll eventually settle down. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to also go to key 13, and I'm going to hit S on my keyboard again to set everything here. And then I'm going to now select the background image, and I'm going to drag it down all the way to 13. And remember, 13 is the same except it's mirrored. So basically I just need to change the positions of my arms and my legs. The height of Data Man is perfectly okay where he's at. So now I'm going to select my leg control here, and you can see that when I select it, my lines pop up down here. If I select this one, the same thing happens. So they're all already keyframed. So I'm going to pull this forward, just out of the way, so I can pull this one back. I'm going to rotate the ankle down. I'm going to go ahead and select this one. W on my keyboard, E on my keyboard to rotate. I'm just going to go ahead and get it kind of up enough. Again, back down to W, till my heel contacts. If I click here on the foot joint, you see that it's -30 up here on my rotate Z. I'm going to change that to 0. And it puts the toe straight. And I'm going to click this back one back here. And I'm going to put -30 up here. And it bends my foot just enough, so now I can select that and I can pull my foot back down and make contact with my contact surface. And my legs should be good. And now I'm going to go ahead and rotate the arms. If I select the upper joint bone, I can select that joint the same way. Pull it up a little bit. And then I'm going to select this arm and pull it backwards. maybe. Okay. And that's probably good. Now I'm going to straighten out the elbow joint a little bit. I think he's got too much swing there. So I'm going to pull it down just a little bit. And right here, I'm going to bend the elbow a little bit more. Okay, so that should pretty much be it. Auto key should have worked and selected everything for us. But at this point, I'm just going to hit S on the keyboard again, just to be on the safe side. And if we take a look at the graph editor and move around a little bit, you can see I've got some curves happening in there now. And what should happen if I move this is my character should move. So now I'm going to hit play on the keyboard, or play over here, and you can see I have a very basic, very rough 3 keyframe walk cycle. So from key 1 to 13 and then 25, all of this is in-betweening that's been done for us by Maya. So all of the in-betweening is handled. So if I stop it anywhere along here, you can see that there's been a calculation done based off of the positions I have already set. All right, so now what I got to do is I need to go through and do the same thing for all of the other frames here. So I'm going to click back on my reference picture. And now I'm going to go to keyframe 4. Okay, so here at keyframe 4, I went ahead and I moved my timeline to 4 here. So keyframe 4 here, I'm going to set a keyframe at frame 4 because this is our next keyframe. One of the things we want to do is probably not move his legs too much, but we do want to get his feet fixed and maybe make some adjustments with the arms a little bit. So we're going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and rotate this foot down so that his toes are back in contact. And at this point, we're also going to be flat on the ground. So we got surface contact. So I may end up having to adjust that back foot just a little bit. But I also want a little bit more, yeah, I think I'm going to go ahead and fix this back up this way. And now I'm going to grab him and push him down just a little bit because this is supposed to be the low point. So I'm going to go ahead and pull it down a little bit. And now, again, I think maybe I was right the first time. Just leave the foot like contact there. And this one, I'm going to bring the contact down a little bit more like that. So now we have contact here and here. Do a little bit of forward movement with the arm. And do the same for the back arm. Just get a little bit more body swing going there. All right, so his leg is a little bit further back here. Kind of want to try to grab that a little bit more here. But I don't want to cause foot slippage as we move along. So I'm going to leave it like this for right now. And then we're going to kind of see how that looks at the end. I am, at this point, going to go ahead and key everything into these positions. Again, auto key should be working for us, but I'm going to hit S on the keyboard just to be on the safe side. And now I am going to jump up to frame 16 and do the same thing for frame 16, but swap the leg positions. Or actually, I shouldn't have to. They should have already swapped for me. So if you look, 4 and 16 are already swapped around. So we're just going to do some cleanup down here of the feet, move the arms a little bit, and give us a little bit more down position. Okay, So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video here while I move forward working on the rest of these. Each time I make a change, so when I do 7 and 19, I will come back up after I do it to show you kind of what it looks like, maybe talk about some issues with it. I'm going to go ahead and make some minor adjustments here on the arms, again, like I did with the other one. And give it a little bit more body swing. And then one thing I wanted you to pay attention to is your foot placement. Don't move the feet back and forth too much because we don't want it to look like he's stepping and his feet are sliding, kind of doing a moonwalk. We want it to look like his foot is planted and he's actually walking. This will be important when we actually get him moving. Also, don't move Dataman forward or backwards, so don't change your translate. We're just wanting to change rotate. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and pause, and I'll be back in a few minutes. Okay, I'm back, and I just got done with 7 and 19. And what I want to talk about here is a couple things for detail. Down here on the toes, don't forget that we need to straighten them out. Easy way to do that is to click on this joint, and then up here at the rotate Z, put in 0. Also, we need to make sure that this foot goes flat. So again, click here and change the rotate Z to 0. And also click on that toe and change the rotate Z to 0 to flatten everything out. We want this foot to be touching on the ground. And this case, I have him pushing up. So this would be the passing. So we're not at the peak point yet, but he starts to come up a little bit. So I push the foot down so that it's touching the floor, and if I need to, I grab him here and push him down a little bit to help get the leg there. You may need to do it a couple times, and then I kind of straighten it out. And the crook in the knee here, as this leg starts to pass, I adjust the arms so that they're almost parallel to the body, a little curved. And then at 19, it's a mirror of that, so you can see. I don't have this leg quite as high up, so I could probably pull that up just a little bit. And if you flip back and forth, you can kind of see your changes. And they don't have to be identical, you know. And so that was the big thing with 7 and 19. Really just some arm adjustments, getting the feet flat. And pay attention to the toes because they're going to need to be adjusted at different points. And we want to make sure they're flat where they're supposed to be, but when they're under pressure like here, we want them to be curved like this. And then of course, as the foot is up in the air, the foot should be flat. Okay, I'm going to pause again and I'm going to finish up with 10 and 22. And that will be just a couple minutes, so I'll be back. Go ahead and work on yours while I'm working on mine. Okay, welcome back. And I haven't actually finished 22 yet because I wanted to walk through it with you. This is just to double check. So by putting it on the keyframe of 22 and then aligning my background up, so I move my background, not my character, to my character. And all I need to do is make sure I make the adjustments to the joints that need adjusted. So in this case, I'm going to select the ankle. I'm going to pull it forward as if he's reaching out for the ground. And I'm going to rotate the ankle up a little bit to get the heel forward so that it looks like he's reaching out. Also, because this is the peak point, or the up, I'm going to go ahead and give him a little bit of a raise up. Just a little bit, kind of straighten that back leg out just a little bit. And that's really all I've done with the leg. I could have maybe given him a little bit more movement there, but I'm not going to. I think it's okay the way it is. This arm should be coming forward. So I'm going to go ahead and hit E and rotate it forward a little bit more. And Q to quit so I can select that other back joint. E again. And just kind of push that one back, kind of get the arm flail going. And it may be too much. That's actually almost identical to what's on 13. So almost looks like his arms aren't moving at all. So I'm going to go ahead and back that off just a little bit. pull it back down. So we want some arm movement. There we go. All right, so now, there we go. All right, so I hit play. And there we have a completed 5-position walk cycle, repeated twice over 24 frames to give us a 2-step walk cycle. And that is it for this. Let me go ahead and change my view here, up to here. And if I rotate around, I can see, make sure I don't have any craziness going on with the arms. His feet look like they're contacting. All right. And the good thing about this is you can always go back frame by frame and make some adjustments and smooth things out a little bit and clean them up if you don't like the way it's going from frame to frame once you have these done. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop this video here, and the next video will discuss how to turn this walk cycle into actual forward movement for a continuous walk. All right, so, or infinite walk rather. Anyway, that's all I have. Thank you for watching, and you have a good night. And also, if you like what you saw, please subscribe to my channel. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them for me, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. Thank you again.